right, mathletes, let's get ready to ace this test. So, this test runs from chapter or section 2.2 in the book to section 2.6. So we'll just run through and kind of review all the things that we've looked at. And I'd recommend, definitely looking through your notes, looking through the exercises in the book, looking through the postulates, theorems, definitions, and then of course preparing your note cards. Okay. So this is section 2.2. We talked about conditional statements. So we know a conditional statement is an if-then statement, right? So the if is the hypothesis, the part that comes after the if, right? And the part that comes after the then is the conclusion. Okay? So in this case, if you're an American citizen, then you have the right to vote, right? So the hypothesis is the part that comes after the if. The conclusion is the part that comes after the then. All right, so, and remember that sometimes an if-then statement isn't written with an if and a then, but it still can be translated to an if-then statement, right? It still might have conditional, features to it. So, for example, number 10, Thanksgiving in the United States falls on the fourth Thursday of November. So you can say, if it's the fourth Thursday in November, then it's Thanksgiving, right? Or you can say, if it's Thanksgiving, then it's the fourth Thursday in November, okay? All right, also remember Venn diagrams can be translated into conditional statements. So if a color is, or if something is blue, then it has color, right? Or if a number is a whole number, then it is an integer, right? And so forth and so on. All right, and then remember to prove a conditional true or false. So in other words, to find the truth value of a conditional, when you evaluate it, you look to see if there's a counterexample, if you can find a counterexample. So a counterexample is something that is true for the hypothesis, but false for the conclusion, right? So if you say if a polygon has 8 sides and it's an octagon, you'd have to find a polygon that has 8 sides that is not an octagon, right? So by definition, that's true, right? Because an octagon is a polygon that has 8 sides. So if a polygon has 8 sides, it is an octagon. So that would be true. Whereas number 18, if you play a sport with a ball and a bat, then you play baseball. So there we can find a counterexample, right? Because there is a sport, at least one, with a ball and a bat. That's not baseball, right? So that would be softball. So this would be false, and the counterexample would be softball. Okay? So a counterexample is something that's true for the hypothesis, false for the conclusion. All right, so an example, like I can't say football wouldn't be an example because it's not a sport with a ball and a bat, right? So for a proper counterexample, it'd have to be true for the hypothesis, false for the conclusion. All right, so then remember we also have, so we have our related conditional statements, right? So if our original condition is if P then Q, then our converse would swap those, right? So we would say if Q then P, right? That's the converse. The inverse keeps the same order, P and Q, but it negates each of them, right? So it's if not P, then not Q, right? All right, and then the contrapositive does both, right? It both flips and negates. So it switches the order of P and Q, but it also negates them, right? So it says if not Q, then not P. All right. And remember that the conditional, the original conditional, and the contrapositive have the same truth value, right? So if the conditional is true, the contrapositive is true. If the contrapositive is false, then the conditional is false, and it goes both ways. And then the converse and inverse have the same truth value as one another, okay? So if the converse is true, the inverse is true. If the inverse is false, the converse is false, right? It goes both ways. So if you look at number 24, two lines that lie in the same plane are coplanar. So you could say if two lines lie in the same plane, then they're coplanar. That would be the original. The converse would be if two lines are coplanar, then they lie in the same plane, right? The inverse would be if two lines are not in the same plane, then they're not coplanar. And the contrapositive would be if two lines are not coplanar, then they are not in the same plane. Okay, and then you can evaluate the truth value of each of those. All right, so here's page 94, I believe. So you can kind of look through and see, make sure you know how to do any of these, right? Make a Venn diagram if you're given a conditional statement. Remember the hypothesis goes in the inner circle and the conclusion goes in the outer circle, right? Generally. So make sure you know how to write postulates as conditional statements and so forth.